Good evening, everyone in the gallery and those joining us online this evening, and I believe there are people downstairs as well. So good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining us. I welcome you to the July 2025 Maribyrnong Council meeting. My name is Pradeep Tiwari. I'm the Mayor of the City of Maribyrnong. I declare the meeting open at 6:38 p.m. Maribyrnong City Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land, the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung and Boon Wurrung Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation, and pays its respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I remind everyone to switch off their phones or turn them to silent. I advise the gallery that this meeting is being recorded and will be available on Council's website. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, your presence may be recorded. In accordance with Council's governance rules, meetings may not be photographed, filmed or recorded without the consent of the Chief Executive Officer. I advise there are no apologies for tonight's meeting. Councillors, are there any leave of absence requests? No. We'll proceed to conflicts of interest. In accordance with Local Government Act 2020, do any councillors have a conflict of interest in relation to any other agenda items? Councillor Simra.
General conflict of interest. Agenda item 10.1, proposed lease 19 Hocking Street, Bulldogs Community Children's Centre, past and potential future employment with the Western Bulldogs Community Foundation.
Thank you, Councillor Simra. You'll be asked to leave the chamber during the consideration of item 10.1. We now move to public question time. Public question time is managed in accordance with Council's governance rules. Members of the public can submit a maximum of 3 questions prior to the commencement of the meeting. As Chair, I will decide who answers the question. Public question time is limited to 15 minutes unless councillors consent to an extension. So I'll now read out the questions. Council has received 51 questions. Question 1. Warren Penner asked the following questions with a single response provided. Question 1. In March 2024, Councillor Carter successfully motioned to establish a Footscray Park 2011 Master Plan Review Advisory Committee. In a passionate speech regarding flawed processes, her intent was clear: to build back public trust. In May, Council resolved to adopt the Advisory Committee terms of reference purpose to support and review the 2011 Footscray Park Master Plan. Through advertising, the 5 community reps were endorsed. Why now is Footscray Park 2011 Master Plan Review Advisory Committee being asked by Council to consider reviewing the Quarry Master Plan when they are not mandated to make such a decision or to change their terms of reference? He says T of R, I'm assuming it says terms of reference. Second question, Councillor Carter delivered a passionate speech regarding flawed processes by Council officers who failed due processes regarding community consultation and delivering the current Footscray Park Master Plan. Her intent was to build back public trust and provide some clarity of the future of the park. Quarry Park was never mentioned within the scope, only mentioned in the background identified with surrounding parks. How is this a process in line with Councillor Carter's motion and intent to build public trust and deliver a focused Footscray Master Plan? And question 3, the Quarry Park Master Plan 2016 is only 8 years into its lifetime. What is the real agenda here, and why is Quarry Park even being discussed at this advisory committee? I might ask, just before you answer, the CEO, I don't know if Mr. Warren Penner or if Warren is in the gallery, but if not, or if you're looking, I just wanted to apologise for not reading your questions out as verbatim in the last meeting, and as promised, I'm reading them out as you've sent them, so hopefully we're all good. Now I'll hand it over to the CEO to reply.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, at its meeting on the 21st of May, Council adopted the Footscray Park Master Plan, the Master Plan Review Advisory Committee Terms of Reference. In the body of this report, there is a section on Quarry Park and specifically notes the integration of Quarry Park into the broader Footscray Park Master Plan recognises the symbiotic relationships between the parkland zones from a sporting, passive use, major event and management perspective. ensuring that the community experience of the site is at the forefront of planning. Further, at its meeting on the 10th of September 2024, Council appointed the Footscray Park Master Plan Review Advisory Committee members. Again, in the body of this report, review of the 2016 Quarry Park Master Plan is specifically mentioned as part of the scope. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is by Pierre Vero, who asks the following questions. And the first two questions will be taken on notice, and the Director of Infrastructure Services will contact you to clarify further before providing a response. The third question will not be read out under clause 52.8.2 as it is considered objectionable in language and substance. Question is, Council had a plan to improve Kleinmaker Lane works was scheduled to start in July-August 2023 and scheduled to finish at the end of the year. Optimistically, the simple project is now 2 years late. What happened to the timeline? The response, we've taken that on notice. Second question is, does Council intend to complete the project? We're also taking that on notice. Moving on to the next question by Ari Casanova, who asks the following questions. Has Council made a decision on the possibility of a rainbow crosswalk outside Footscray Station in line with Action 2.2.3 in the LGBTIQA+ strategy and action plan? I'll hand it over to the CEO to respond.
Through you, Mayor. Council has extensively explored opportunities for a rainbow crosswalk, used as an example of permanent rainbow installations in Measure 2.2.3. Consultation has occurred with the Victorian LGAs who have installed rainbow crossings, such as Geelong City Council, and due to prohibitive costs of installation and repair, alternative forms of rainbow art installation to promote LGBTIQA+ visibility have been implemented. The Footscray Pride flag mural is a primary example, occupying the north wall of Footscray Library. Installed in January 2025 by artists at B Collective, this is one of the largest such examples in Australia. Additionally, Council is investigating installation of rainbow walkways at our community service sites, such as libraries, community centres and recreation centres. These are surface decals that are safe, resilient to weather and foot traffic, and will be a vibrant, cost-effective and lasting addition to rainbow inclusion campaigns at Council, alongside the Pride flag mural and Love Your West with Pride Street banners.
Thank you. And second question is, could Council please provide an update on the development of minimum LGBTIQA+ accreditation service standards that are appropriate, applicable and including of local government as per Action 4.1.1 in the LGBTIQA+ strategy and action plan? Back to you, Senior.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Council has reviewed the Rainbow Tick Accreditation and Australian Workplace Equality Index, AWEI, as two potential accreditation standards that could be accessed by Council. Due to the nature of the accreditation structure, primarily focused on reviewing LGBTIQA+ friendly service provision in the healthcare context, Rainbow Tick is not fit for purpose on a whole of Council scale. However, it is recommended that it be explored for specific services such as youth and/or library services. The AWEI is better placed to be rolled out across Council, whose scope measures inclusive workplace practices on an organisational level. Proposals are underway to engage in the AWEI accreditation process in the coming year.
Thank you. And final question is, would Council consider joining the Rainbow Cities Network?
The Rainbow Cities Network, RCN, is a growing network of international cities concerned with LGBTI policies. No Australian cities are currently members of the RCN, and membership tends to be from larger capital cities across the world. Maribyrnong City Council's LGBTIQA+ strategy and action plan 2021 to 26 reinforces Council's commitment to LGBTIQA+ people, families and communities. This commits Council to actions that strengthen social and economic inclusion and reduce barriers to participation in the city. As part of this commitment, Council is engaged in several local networks that support LGBTIQA+ rights and interests, including the LG Pro Rainbow Network, a special interest coordinated and convened a special interest group coordinated and convened by LG Pro, which is local government professionals. The Victorian Pride Lobby, local government area advocacy arm. Rainbow Local Government. This is the group that informs and unifies Victorian councils around LGBTQ causes. Council has also joined other Australian and New Zealand organisations and government bodies in signing the Darlington Statement on intersex rights, a wide-ranging commitment to advancing that cause and the outcomes articulated by intersex human rights groups. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next, on to the next question. It's by Lisa Quincy, who asks the following questions. I refer to my third question asked on the 17th of June 2025 to be taken under advisement regarding new pipework from the Angers Hotel, I'm assuming that's Anglers Hotel, into the bank of the Maribyrnong River. My question asks if requisite procedures followed permission sought to open the pit to undertake works. Council, Melbourne Water Authority on mandatory paperwork permits.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, any drainage works from Anglers Hotel into the Maribyrnong River will require approval from Melbourne Water. Officers are more than happy to follow this matter up with Melbourne Water as the relevant approval authority in this instance.
I'll just take a quick pause for a moment for the gallery in case any other members don't know. If you need to use the facilities, the toilets are just out there, down the road, including baby change rooms. So. Next question is, does the marquee structure erected on the grounds of 2 Anglers Way, Anglers Tavern, meet COVID-19 extension exemption precondition .4.4? The height of a building constructed or placed under an exemption clause must not exceed 3.6 metres. To you, Sierra.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, the marquee structure and its height satisfy the COVID-19 exemptions under clause 52.18 of the Maribyrnong Planning Scheme and can confirm that no planning permit is required for this structure.
Thank you. And final question, does the marquee structure erected on the grounds of 2 Anglers Way, Anglers Tavern under 52.18 meet council's satisfaction that this structure in a flood event is safe as it is in a floodway overlay and hence ultimately council's decision?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, on account of its compliance, as I've stated, with necessary controls within the planning scheme, the marquee structure meets council's satisfaction.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question by Dylan Alexander, who asks the following question. In regards to the council decision on 17th of June 2025, what specific evidence did council rely on to determine that removing the requirements for a not-for-profit provider at the Bulldogs Community Children's Centre would not negatively impact the quality of care, staff retention or child wellbeing? I'll hand it over to Lucas.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Council's current community engagement process considers the terms and conditions of the proposed head lease with the Western Bulldogs. On the 17th of June, Council resolved to conduct community consultation to test the in-principle intent to remove the not-for-profit requirement. The change to the proposed head lease was requested by the Western Bulldogs and was based on the outcome of their expression of interest process, whereby any preferred provider would need to commit to requirements for public benefit, such as cost of service, quality, as determined by the national authority, and staffing matters and a range of other things. Services were also asked to include any proposal for significant capital investment in the centre throughout the future lease of the term. As many would be aware, Council has received significant feedback on the proposal and will later tonight be considering ceasing the existing process and keeping the not-for-profit clause in any future head lease.
Thank you. And next question is, in regards to the council decision on the 17th of June 2025, given the strong feedback from families opposing the removal of the not-for-profit requirement, what mandate does council believe it has to proceed with a model that lacks community support? I'll hand it back to you, Lucas.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, Council resolved on the 17th of June, as we said, to commence community engagement on the proposed head lease to seek the views of the community before making a determination on this matter. As such, Council has not yet formed a final view on this matter. However, as mentioned on agenda item 10.1 of tonight's agenda, Council will consider a notice of motion where proposers terminating the community engagement process and continuing with the proposed head lease, with a further report to be presented to Council on this matter later in 2025.
Thank you. And third question is, in regards to the council decision on the 17th of June 2025, will council disclose material that shows or that led to their decision, e.g. any financial modelling or cost-benefit analysis that shows how commercial providers would deliver a better outcome for families and children than the existing not-for-profit model, or any formal risk assessment before voting to remove the not-for-profit requirement, particularly regarding the potential impacts on the educator turnover, service quality and family satisfaction? Hand it back to you, Lucas.
Again, Mayor, through you, the intent, of course, tonight is to look at ceasing that community consultation process. And as previously advised, the matter is considered between the proposed head lease between Council and the Western Bulldogs. The Western Bulldogs undertook their expression of interest process, which determined that the best proposed outcome for the centre, given Council is only involved in the proposed head lease with the Western Bulldogs, the matters that were considered include, as I mentioned earlier, community benefit, including price, quality, staffing, programming, capital investment, and other matters.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question, which is by Carla Mira on behalf of the Happy Space Allied Health, who asks the following questions. What organisations or professionals did Council consult with prior to the motion proposed lease 19 Hocking Street, Footscray, Bulldogs Community Children's Centre, in regards to the benefits of shifting our NFP childcare setting to a for-profit centre in regards to its impact on children's wellbeing and learning? I'll hand it back to you, Lucas.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Given Council is only involved in the proposed head lease with the Western Bulldogs, Council did not directly consult with other organisations. However, subsequent to the resolution, Council has been conducting a consultation process under Section 115 of the Local Government Act. Council is, however, aware of the Western Bulldogs' desire to explore renewal options for the community benefit for more than 12 months, and I understand that, that the current provider has been meeting with the Western Bulldogs throughout that time.
Thank you, Lucas. And I just wanted to, with the consent of the Council, I wish to propose an extension to public question time of 15 minutes. Councillors, do I have your support? Thank you. We'll now continue with the public question time. And we're up to... back to question 2 by Carla Mira. In relation to the motion proposed leased 19 Hocking Street, Footscray, Bulldogs Community Children's Centre, some councillors argued that the current daily rates were on par with for-profit centres in the area. Can councillors share which for-profit centres they are referring to in the area? And back to you, Lucas.
Certainly, Mayor. Thank you. And through you, there are currently 17 private providers of long-day care in Maribyrnong. Of these, 11 of them are cheaper than the current daily rates at the Bulldogs Centre. Prices range from $135 per day up to $199.50 per day, with an average price across all private centres being $167.63 or $5.36 cheaper than the current price at the Western Bulldogs Centre. The current provider is also the highest price of all not-for-profit centres in Maribyrnong.
Thank you. And the third question is Council willing to guarantee that rates of our childcare will not increase substantially over the 10-year tenancy? And if so, how will they commit to this? To you, Lucas.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, the matter before Council relates to proposed head lease with the Western Bulldogs, as we know. The proposed head lease is not able to prescribe childcare rates. However, and this is a matter for the head lease at Western Bulldogs, however, they have indicated that any increase, regardless of the provider, in fees over the life of the lease must be at minimal levels and in line with industry standards.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. It's asked by Aisha Montalti, who asks 3 questions. However, in accordance with clause 52.8.1 of Council's governance rules, the third question will not be read as it relates to the business operations of the Western Bulldogs, which is not appropriate for Council to make comment on. First question is, how will councils work with ECMS families and the Western Bulldogs to secure a stable long-term future for the centre, including any needed capital works or improvements? To you, Lucas.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, the proposed head lease, the subject community engagement, considers many leasing terms, inclusive of the provisions for subleasing. The proposed head lease, consistent with legislative requirements, provides that Council cannot reasonably withhold its consent to the grant of a sublease subject to the provisions of that head lease being met. Regardless of the outcomes of any process, Council will, of course, work with the Western Bulldogs and the provider to determine the best capital investment for the service into the future and how this should also be funded.
Thank you. Next question is, what steps will Council take to ensure the lease process is transparent and prioritises quality, community values and educator retention over bureaucratic or political interests. Back to you, Lucas.
Thank you, Mayor. As we know, I've already said, Council resolved on the 17th of June to commence community engagement on the proposed head lease. Any future decisions by Council on the proposed lease would, with the Western Bulldogs, would take into consideration Council's legislative and community engagement obligations, including any further engagement that we need to make. Again, Council is later tonight considering a motion to retain the not-for-profit clause in any future lease.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question by Jessica Shan, who asks the following questions. With the public consultation period concluded for the intention to lease at 19 Hocking Street, Bulldogs Community Childcare Centre, and notice of motion pulled forward from August by Councillor Cook-Lamb, will full copies of the submissions and summary reports still be generated and available to the public as agenda meeting minutes prior to finalisation of the final lease terms? I'll hand it back to you, Lucas.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. So, as we know, agenda item 10.1 of tonight's agenda is the notice of motion which proposes terminating the community engagement process with a further report to be presented to Council. In the event that this notice of motion is passed by Council, it will discontinue the current community engagement process. As such, it would not normally be proposed to proceed to making these submissions publicly available. However, Council will be required to initiate a new community engagement process for any proposed head lease with the Western Bulldogs, which will then require the results of that community engagement to be presented back to Council for consideration before making any final determination.
Thank you, and we'll move on to the next question. Council has received several questions in relation to the Footscray CBD security guard proposal. Under clause 52.9 of Council's governance rules, the questions have been grouped with responses provided as follows. Ben Krismanich asks the following questions. A single response has been provided for questions 1 and 2. Does the Council acknowledge the contradiction between the new mental health and wellbeing support program aimed at assisting those experiencing mental health crisis and the simultaneous proposal to deploy private security in public spaces, an approach that research suggests can increase risk of racial profiling, physical confrontations, and further marginalisation? And second question is, how does the Council plan to reconcile these conflicting strategies to ensure that vulnerable community members are actually supported and protected? I'll hand it to Mike, as Director of Planning and Environment Services.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, Council understands this refers to the State Government's recent announcement of a new mental health and wellbeing locale for Maribyrnong. While we welcome this investment, operational details have not yet been provided to Council. In parallel, Council is responding to ongoing concerns about safety and staff wellbeing in the Footscray CBD. The proposed trial would not create new enforcement powers, but would provide additional support for Council officers in high-risk situations. This operational measure would sit alongside broader coordination work with service providers and advocacy for a system-wide reform.
Thank you. And third question is, what governance measures will be put in place to monitor the inevitable misconduct by private security guards, and will there be community consultation or independent oversight to review such data and address any concerns that arise? Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. If the trial proceeds, it would be delivered under a clear contractual and governance arrangements consistent with other security services used by Council. Security personnel would operate within defined roles and be subject to Council direction without any expanded powers. Council will monitor the trial through regular reporting and feedback mechanisms, including engagement with partners and stakeholders. Evaluation of outcomes will inform future decision-making, and any concerns raised during the trial will be addressed through existing accountability processes.
Thank you. Next question is asked by Shifra Bluestein, who asks the following questions. In relation to the proposal to introduce the Melbourne model security guards and local law officers moving people on, I am aware of a buying invite-only meeting at Mr. West where I understand people were talked at and many didn't feel comfortable raising objections, and where this program wasn't put on a specific proposal. Why has this proposal been announced 3 days before the meeting where it will be voted on with no public consultation? Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Council is considering a time-limited trial of contracted security personnel in the Footscray CBD to support officer safety during operational duties. This follows sustained concerns raised by local traders and residents as well as previous trial and direct engagement with stakeholders in the precinct. Security personnel are already used in various service settings across the municipality to support safe operations. The proposed Footscray trial is consistent with these arrangements and would occur entirely within existing legal and policy frameworks. While formal consultation is typically not required for short-term operational decisions of this nature, Council recognises the importance of transparency and community confidence. Should the trial proceed, its implementation will be monitored and reviewed in consultation with local partners as part of Council's broader revitalisation and safety efforts.
Thank you. And second question, why specifically have community services, including community legal services, who have routinely been required to support people whose marginalisation and suffering was exacerbated and human rights breached by decisions of officers carrying out this program in the City of Melbourne, not been consulted? The experience of community legal centres referenced above is that the COM program has been deeply problematic. Mike, back to you.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Council acknowledges the expertise of community legal and support services and their contribution to informing good public policy. While formal consultation with legal services has not taken place at this early stage, Council continues to engage with a range of local service providers through the Community Development Team. This includes ongoing collaboration with organisations across the housing, health and outreach sectors. Our approach is shaped by Council's social justice framework, which promotes respectful and equitable engagement in public space. As this work progresses, Council will continue to engage with a broader range of partners.
Thank you. And third question is, on what evidence base does Council assert this program should be implemented, and what other models did it consider in its decision-making process? Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Council's consideration of this approach is informed by consistent feedback and reporting over the past year, including incident data, direct staff experiences and concerns raised by traders and the public. These include reports of aggression, threats of staff safety and declining perceptions of safety in parts of the Footscray CBD. Council has reviewed approaches taken in other municipalities, including the cities of Melbourne, Stonington and Frankston. These comparisons inform the proposed design, which emphasises a time-limited presence, a passive non-enforcement role and strict adherence to existing legal powers. The intent of the trial is to test whether additional security support can help create a safer environment for council officers and the broader public without infringing on the rights and dignity of people in public space. Outcomes will be closely monitored and considered alongside Council's broader safety, amenity and inclusion strategies.
Thank you. And we'll move on to the next questions by Monty Green, who asks the following questions. Oh, sorry, one before that. John Chatterton, who asks the following questions. The 2025 Melbourne Model for Community Safety has a multiple layer response, including local laws officers, community safety team in late 2025, and police to address complex on-street issues relating to public consumption of alcohol, begging and other antisocial behaviour. This is a downstream approach to safety, enforcing laws without addressing the upstream issues, e.g. poverty, poor housing and mental health services that often lead community concerns. When considering actions to addressing community safety, what actions are and will Council take to address these upstream issues in Maribyrnong? Mike, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Council recognises that many of the issues impacting safety and amenity in the Footscray CBD are closely linked to broader social and economic factors. While Council is not the primary provider of housing, health or mental health services, we do play a key role in coordinating local responses and working with partners to strengthen community support systems. Council's community development and social policy teams are focused on improving alignment across Council's priorities and service delivery and on fostering stronger collaboration with local health, housing and outreach organisations. This work is guided by our Social Justice Framework 2023 to 2033 and Municipal Public Health and Wellbeing Plan, which together promote rights-based, inclusive and person-centred responses. Through initiatives such as the Maribyrnong Homelessness Response Group, Council supports coordinated and visible service responses in public space. These efforts are part of our long-term commitment to community wellbeing and equity, recognising that sustainable improvements in public safety also depend on connection, care and access to support.
Thank you, Mike. Next question by Monty Green, who asks the following questions. This proposal builds on a City of Melbourne trial of fewer than 6 months duration. Data concerning the efficacy of this trial is extremely limited and is derived from local laws officers' perceptions and not substantive data or evidence. What reasons does Council have to believe a trial here will be effective? Mike, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Council's consideration of a time-limited security trial in the Footscray CBD has not been based solely on any one model. Council has reviewed other municipalities' experience, and these comparisons helped inform design choices. Locally, the proposal responds to repeated concerns raised by Council staff, traders and community members over the past year. These concerns are supported by officer observations that highlight ongoing challenges in delivering services safely.
Thank you. Second question is, has Council given due consideration to trials of other similar programs with stronger evidence bases? Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, the trial aims to test whether temporary security support can provide additional support for local laws officers and improve perceptions of safety in key locations. It is not intended as a standalone solution, but as one component of a broader program of work that includes service coordination, urban design, place activation and partnerships with local organisations. Should the trial proceed, Council will monitor its implementation closely and review outcomes in consultation with community and service stakeholders.
Thank you. Next question is, the Caddo trial was effective because officers were specifically trained by AFRICORS. Does your tendering process for this proposal have measures to ensure security officers are culturally appropriate to serve this community safely? Just before you go ahead, I note the time. I might need to ask the councillors if we're okay to extend the time by 15 minutes, with your permission. Thank you. We've now extended public question time by a further 15 minutes. We'll continue on. Do you need me to read that question again, Mike?
I'm okay, thanks, Mr.
Thank you,
Mayor.
please. Yes.
Council recognises the importance of cultural awareness and respectful engagement when working in diverse public settings. Should a trial proceed, any contracted security personnel would be required to operate in line with Council's values and standards, including principles outlined in the social justice framework. While the formal procurement process has not yet commenced, any service provider engaged by Council would be expected to demonstrate appropriate training, capability and conduct requirements. This includes ensuring that staff are equipped to interact safely and respectfully with people from a wide range of backgrounds. Council will continue to explore how best to ensure any engagement is culturally appropriate and aligns with the expectations of the local community.
Thanks, Mike. We'll move on to the next questions. Public questions have been submitted by Anne Jacobs, David, Matthew and Hayden Bryce, which are the same question. These questions all are as follow. How will this trial be integrated with existing health and social services where future programs have been promised? Is there a timeline for the activation and a plan for the integration into these efforts? Back to you, Mike, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Council maintains a strong working relationship with local health, housing and outreach organisations through its community development team. These partnerships support joint planning, service coordination and visible responses in the Footscray CBD. This proposed trial would not operate in isolation. It is one element within a broader set of actions to improve safety and amenity. Council is committed to ensuring that any operational measures complement existing support systems. While some future programs, such as the State Government's mental health and wellbeing locals, have been announced, specific timelines for their implementation have not yet been confirmed. Council will continue to engage with relevant agencies to support integration as these programs progress. The recent appointment of a dedicated Footscray revitalisation lead further strengthens Council's ability to coordinate across systems and ensure alignment with broader goals and inclusion, wellbeing and care.
Thank you. And next question is, Council's social justice framework indicates their commitment to equity and fairness and to avoid contributing to further disadvantage in their policy making. What measures are included in this proposal to ensure it is in accord with this framework? Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Council's social justice framework outlines a commitment to equity, fairness and inclusive practice. It encourages careful consideration of how policies and services may affect different groups in the community, particularly those who experience systemic barriers or disadvantage. Should the proposed trial proceed, it will be guided by this framework. While it does not introduce new powers or enforcement roles, care would be taken to ensure the approach is proportionate, sensitive to community needs and aligned with Council's broader objectives. Ongoing dialogue with local partners and stakeholders would help inform implementation and support any necessary adjustments over time.
Thank you. And third question is relating to security proposal 9.2. What powers do private security have to request information, make arrests, use force, and how will this be monitored? Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Under the proposed trial, contracted security personnel would be embedded alongside Council's local laws team to support officer safety and provide a visible presence in the Footscray CBD. As with all security contractors employed by Council, these personnel would operate under the Private Security Act 2004 and would not be granted any new or special powers. They would not have authority to request information, make arrests or use force. Their role is not to enforce laws, but to support council officers in carrying out their existing duties. Security personnel would be subject to clear expectations around conduct, and their activities would be monitored through regular reporting and oversight by council staff.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. Anne Jacobs asks the following questions. This proposal has been brought to council without true community consultation. Business owners are one stakeholder group, but their concerns alone cannot drive policy for the 80,000 other people living and working here. Is council prepared to undertake a genuine process of community consultation to ensure that this policy serves the needs of the whole community and not just the business interest? Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Council acknowledges the importance of inclusive and transparent community engagement. The appointment of a dedicated Footscray revitalisation lead reflects our intention to coordinate efforts across Council and to ensure a wide range of perspectives are heard and considered. Council's adopted community engagement policy commits to engaging those who may be affected by a decision using a variety of tools and methods tailored at different community needs and contexts. While not all projects require the same level of or style of engagement, Council is committed to ensuring meaningful opportunities for community input, particularly where the potential impact is broad. Outcomes of engagement are communicated back to the community as part of our commitment to accountability and trust.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question by Farida Iqbal, who asks the following questions. How has Council applied its obligations under the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities in reaching the decisions to introduce the Melbourne model of security guards and local law officers employing local laws to move on people experiencing marginalisation and homelessness? On what basis has Council decided to significantly limit rights under the Charter, including A, freedom of movement, B, privacy and reputation, C, peaceful assembly, and D, liberty and security? Mike, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Council has not adopted the Melbourne model. What is under consideration is a time-limited operational trial involving contracted security in the Footscray CBD to support officer safety. The trial would not introduce new enforcement powers or alter the legal authority of Council staff. As decisions must be compatible with the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006, Council officers are required to uphold these rights in their day-to-day duties. The proposed trial would involve contracted security staff operating within existing legal limits. Council's social justice framework provides the foundation for our approach, prioritising rights-based, proportionate and respectful engagement in public space. These commitments will continue to guide implementation should the trial proceed.
Thanks, Mike. And just for the benefit of the gallery, we've got about 8 questions left to go. We're trying to go through them as fast as we can. The second question is, will Council be releasing a statement of compatibility so its rationale for rights limitation is transparent and can be subject to scrutiny? Mike, please.
Statements of compatibility are required when Council proposes new laws or policies that change legal powers or responsibilities. The current proposal is operational in nature and does not involve any new laws or expanded powers, and therefore does not require a statement of compatibility. Nonetheless, Council is bound by the Charter in all decisions and service delivery. Any operational action affecting public space must be reasonable, lawful and proportionate. These principles, together with the social justice framework, continue to guide our approach. Council remains committed to transparency, human rights and inclusive public engagement.
Thanks, Mark. Next question is asked by Caitlin Caruana, who asks the following question. A single response has been provided for questions 1 and 2. In relation to the proposed security guard measure, has Council considered other alternate options to security guards, particularly given an increased police presence in Footscray has not delivered increased community safety, and police have more powers than security guards? If so, can Council outline what they expect security guards can deliver for the community safety that the increased police presence hasn't already? And question 2, in relation to the proposed security guard measure, has the Council considered what measure, if any, can be taken to ensure that the presence or involvement of contracted security will not lead rough sleepers to wrongly believe there is a legal obligation to move on where they are not committing any offence? For example, if there is a plan for the monitoring of individual outcomes and experiences for homeless people who interact with guards if the pilot goes ahead. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Council is considering a range of approaches to address safety concerns raised by staff, traders and community members in the Footscray CBD. The intent of the proposed trial is not to replace or replicate the role of Victoria Police, but to support the safety of council officers as they carry out operational duties in high-risk settings. Contracted security personnel would not be involved in enforcement or intervention. Their role is to provide passive support and a visible presence while working alongside local laws officers. This arrangement aims to reduce risks for council staff and enhance public confidence without altering the legal responsibilities or powers of any party involved. Council will continue to monitor and assess the effectiveness of this approach alongside other strategies underway in the precinct.
Thank you. And the third question is, in the absence of any firm date for a Footscray crisis hub, is there a standard council guidance and referral process for people who are in need of crisis support, including housing support, which will be used in this pilot? Mike, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Council's social policy and community development teams are helping ensure that staff across areas like local laws and city amenity understand how to respond to people in crisis and connect them with relevant support services. This work is shaped by Council's social justice framework. The Maribyrnong Homeless Response Group brings together council and local housing, health and outreach services to support coordinated approaches to homelessness in the CBD. These partnerships help guide how council responds to people experiencing disadvantage and enables referral to appropriate support where possible. While the timeline of the state government's proposed crisis hub is still to be confirmed, council will continue to work closely with local service providers. If the trial proceeds, these referral pathways and support partnerships will remain central.
Thank you. Moving on, Jennifer Shime asks the following questions. What is the scheduled date for the containers removal from the Anglers Tavern car park?
Thank you, Mayor, through you.
So,
The owner has now until the 16th of August 2025 to remove all containers in line with a recent issue of a planning infringement notice, including a fine. This has arisen as the owner failed to remove the 5 containers by the original deadline of 11 July 2025. In the event that the latest deadline is not met, Council will proceed with further enforcement. This may include fines as well as legal action in an effort to achieve both compliance and to secure community safety.
Thank you, CEO. Next question is by Isabel Mustra, who asks the following questions. Local law enforcement has already aggravated structural issues within our community. What would adding another layer of policing achieve in combating safety issues when policing thus far has only contributed to a decline in safety for the most vulnerable members of our community? I'll get you, Mike, to answer that.
Thank you, Mayor. Local law officers carry out a range of functions that help uphold general local laws and promote community safety. The trial would not introduce new enforcement powers or alter the legal authority of council staff, but will enable staff to safely carry out their work and continue to deliver a compassionate service and provide information to people in need of support.
Thank you. And second question is, does the Maribyrnong Council have a financial incentive to adopt the security patrol model Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. There is no financial incentive associated with this proposal. If the proposal proceeds, a procurement process will be followed to ensure a capable provider is appointed that responds to the brief.
Thank you. And third question, you say you have consulted with local traders who may not reside within Maribyrnong or specifically Footscray. Where was the local community consultation that includes residents and patrons of Footscray? Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. While formal consultation is typically not required for short-term operational decisions of this nature, Council recognises the importance of transparency and community confidence. Should the trial proceed, its implementation will be monitored and reviewed in consultation with local partners as part of Council's broader revitalisation and safety efforts.
Thank you. And final question for public question time. Glenn Yates asks the following questions, which was received at 5:33 p.m. and will be taking it on notice with a response provided in the minutes. Question is, I want to send condolences to the family of the resident who sadly lost his life on Francis Street recently and revisit a question put to Council on 18 February 2025 when the Maribyrnong Truck Action Group asked the following in relation to the pedestrian crossing on Francis Street near Ballarat Street. In order to gather the data needed to help advocate towards potentially having a red light speed camera installed, is it possible for MCC to position its mobile VMS SAMS close to the crossing to record speeds and activate the too fast, too slow messaging on the VMS, please? My new question to Council is, can Council advise why did this not happen? All right. Good to see you.
Through you, Mayor, we're going to take that question on notice and we will come back to Mr Yates and we will publish the answer in the minutes.
Thank you. And that concludes question time. So I'll just see. So question time is now finished at 7:24 p.m. We'll move on to the confirmation of minutes. Agenda item 6.1, confirmation of minutes, 17th of June 2025. I'll call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yengi.
That council confirms the minutes of the council meeting held on 17th of June 2025.
Thank you. I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Lamb. I'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. The motion is carried. Councillors, there are no reports from committees to be tabled at the meeting. We'll move on to petitions. I'd like to remind councillors that in accordance with Council's governance rules, a councillor may read the petition text, but it is not permitted to speak to the petition. Agenda item 8.1, petition, Bulldogs Community Children's Centre. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yengi.
That council receives and notes the petition Bulldogs Community Children's Centre and requests the Chief Executive Officer to consider the petition and determine the appropriate response.
Thank you. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. I put the motion to a vote. The motion is carried. Now, councillors, I note there's a change to the order of business. There's a significant community interest in the proposed lease at 19 Hocking Street, Bulldogs Community Children's Centre. With the consent of all council, I wish to propose a change to the order of business in accordance to clause 19 of council's governance rules. Councillors, do I have your consent to bring agenda item 10.1, notice of motion 2025, proposed lease at 19 Hocking Street, Bulldogs Community Children's Centre, forward as the next or the first item of business? All okay? Okay, good. Thank you, councillors. We'll now proceed to agenda item 10.1. Councillor Silmar, I'd now ask you to leave the room for this consideration of this item. We'll call you back as soon as it's finished. Thank you. Don't go too far, we need you after this. Moving on to agenda item 10.1, notice of motion 2025-06, proposed lease at 19 Hocking Street, Bulldogs Community Children's Centre. I call for Councillor Lam to move a motion.
Okay. Under Chapter 2, Division 4, Route 22 of the Governance Rules, it is my intention to move at the Council meeting on the 22nd of July 2025 a motion which reads, motion proposes lease 19 Hocking Street, Footscray, Bulldogs Community Children's Centre. That Council resolved the following in relation to the Council decision of 17th of June 2025 proposing lease 19 Hocking Street, Footscray, Bulldogs Community Children's Centre. Number one, not the considerable community interest and submissions received in relation to the proposed lease of the Bulldog Community Children's Centre. Number two, not the result of the community engagement to date with significant opposition to the term of the proposed lease. Number three, result to terminate the current community engagement process. Number four, request the Chief Executive Officer to notify all submitters that the community engagement process has been terminated and the proposed lease will not proceed in its current form. Number five, request that the Chief Executive Officer to present a further report to Council in 2025 addressing Council's option for the proposed lease, inclusive of the retention of the not-for-profit condition on subleasing and the removal of the first right of refusal in the new lease. And number six, request the Chief Executive Officer delegating to notify the Western Bulldogs of this Council resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Lam. I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Yangi. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mayor. Maribor Non-City Council began the community engagement processes for the proposed lease of the Western Bulldog Children's Centre in the good faith. From the start, our goal has been to listen carefully to the community. Councillor wanted to consider what is the best option for the future might be, but we have always been committed to consultation on this and all matter that the community has an interest in. For this lead proposal, we wanted to ensure everyone had the opportunity to share their views before any decisions were made. And this was the purpose of the submission process defined by the Local Government Act. This process has been a focus on the listening to the community to ensure all perspectives are thoughtfully considered. As a part of that, the Mayor, Councillor Yankee, and I met with the family and staff of the service to get a greater understanding of their views on this matter. After the meeting directly with the parents and hearing these concerns, it is clearly this issue has caused a significant worries and distress, and we must respect that feedback. Hearing from those directly affected is especially important to us. Since the engagement began, many residents, parents, and community members having expressed concern, particularly about potential change to exploring an option that is different to the not-for-profit requirement. The community worries this change could impact the centre, affordability and accessibility for local families. We certainly understand that many families that use the service are concerned about change, regardless of any opportunity to have the building renewed. To address the concern and demonstrate that we truly values community voice, I believe we should concluding the current engagement process now. Ending engagement will help preventing ongoing confusion and distress. Council's aim has been to explore options that maximize benefit for our community. Given the feedback received, it is clear we need to pause, listen more deeply, and rethink our approach. I request that the Chief Executive Officer prepare a new report outlining the Council options for the lease, focusing on what will best serve the community. And this report should include maintaining for the not-for-profit rule on subleasing to protect the centre's community focus, and also including removing the first right of refusal in the lease, which has raised concern. Finally, I ask that the Western Bulldogs be formally informed of this Council decision so they fully understand the community's views and Council's position. Thank you to everyone who took the time to share their thought. It is vital we keep listening and make decisions that truly maximize benefit for our community. And thank you very much for everyone being here today too.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lam. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Sure, I'll say a couple of things. I guess the first is just to thank everybody, especially those in the crowd here tonight, and those who are online or who haven't come to the session tonight, but just to thank everyone for participating in the consultation process. I know Cook's touched on it extensively. I know that the past couple of weeks have been quite distressing for the community, and especially our parents out there who are accessing childcare and kindergarten following the arrest of Josh Brown. And I guess I'm also conscious that there was a bit of misinformation sort of circulating out in community, which I know has caused additional angst for our community as well. So again, thanks to everybody for participating in the consultation process. And as Cook sort of mentioned, after extensive engagement with community members and organisations in regards to the retention of the NFP clause and whether or not it should be removed from the lease agreement, we received an overwhelming response from community, and who told us that they wanted the NFP clause to be kept in the lease. And so I guess this motion is a product of that consultation process and the overwhelming response that we've received from community. And so we'll be asking our officers to prepare an additional report, which will come back to council. But if I may, I might just throw over to Lucas, if it's okay. Sorry to put you on the spot. Just keen for you to maybe outline to community members, just in regards to the next steps following this. I know that we don't have an outcome of the motion yet. We're going to vote on it, but just to outline next steps, because I am conscious that there's probably a lot of people out there who may not be clear on what's happening tonight and what happens after the motion, depending on which way it goes. So it would be really great if you could maybe clarify that for community members as well, after we've voted.
Yes, Councillor Ying, I'm sorry. I think it's difficult for Lucas to answer that question until the motion has been voted on.
Okay.
If the motion is carried, he will talk about can certainly talk about the process, and if it's lost also. So if we could, Mayor, just continue.
All right, so if you could have a chat, just outline that, that'll be really great. Yeah, I guess maybe I'll throw back to the Mayor, but thanks again to everybody for your participation.
Thank you, Councillor Yangi. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Mayor. So I'm feeling a little bit of déjà vu tonight. And while I welcome this change of heart by councillors, driven by a strong community campaign, I can't help but reflect on the fact that it could have all been avoided. If all councillors had anticipated the community response and voted for the motion that I moved at the council meeting in June, which contained the keeping the not-for-profit clause, removing the first right of refusal clause and a 5-year lease term, we wouldn't again be here talking about the issue, and the community would have avoided a month of stress, uncertainty and anguish. We have a very unusual lease arrangement for the Bulldogs Community Childcare Centre, and none of the other council-owned childcare centres have a third-party arrangement where the third party takes money via a lease with the service provider without itself investing in the upkeep or improvements to the building and surrounds. And this arrangement must end, and it must end in the shortest amount of time possible and be brought in line with how council manages all the other childcare centres that we own, because council is in the business of care and not profit. Someone said to me last week that this issue isn't about not-for-profit versus for-profit, that it's about two different service providers providing a service. But I think they were wrong. I think this is first and foremost about profit and removing it from a space that should be focused on care and education. It's about aligning our services with our community values. And in this case, it's about removing the profit motive from a childcare centre and focusing on providing high-quality care and education, where families have a positive relationship with the care provider and are actively involved in their children's early education. Maribyrnong has a civic-minded and communally active community, and I really want to thank everybody who's here tonight, to the parents, the carers, the grandparents, the neighbours and the friends who organised and who joined this campaign. It's your efforts that have signalled very clearly your expectations about the values that you expect council to uphold in all its decision-making, its programs and delivery of services. This motion seeks to terminate the community engagement and consultation process, and I'm in two minds about that, because I've spent the last nearly 5 years as a councillor working hard to improve the way that council consults with the community, and I'm loath to set a precedent where once councillors think they've heard enough from the community that they can bring a motion to the chamber and end it. I don't think it's great practice, and I really don't want it to become a regular fixture of our engagement processes. As councillors, we must be able to engage with the community on complex and contentious issues such as this one with respect, honesty and receive information in the spirit in which it is given, not as an attack but as constructive criticism, and this community campaign did just that. So I want to really thank everybody and just really reiterate that I support not-for-profit childcare and early years education. Thanks.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pereira.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for coming. Usually we're quite a bit more lonely in here, to be honest. You should all come again. Tonight's motion is an important step forward. It recognises the considerable community concern about the proposed lease for the Bulldogs Community Children's Centre, and it brings the conversation back to where it should have started with the alternate motion raised in June, which I supported, that clearly contains protection for community benefit and would have mitigated a lot of community stress over the last month. The inclusion of the not-for-profit clause and the removal of the first right of refusal reflects the values and expectations that our community has consistently voiced, and the shorter 5-year lease aligns with our other early years providers and would return the centre to council's stewardship sooner. These shifts are a direct result of strong, thoughtful community advocacy with over 100 submissions, and I want to thank everybody who contributed because it's made a real difference to the process. I'm also concerned that this motion has compounded confusion around the lease and consultation process, and that those that took time to make a submission deserve to have a chance to be heard and be confident that their submissions are integrated into the final decision-making process. This experience reminds us how critical it is to design consultation processes that truly value public input, and let's commit to doing better. Thank you.
Thank you. Any Councillor Meredith?
Yeah.
Councillor Meredith.
Thanks. Thanks everybody for coming out. It really is nice to see everybody in the audience because we, as Elena said, that we don't generally get many people here, so it's really good. I guess I welcome this motion, and it's come about due to strong community concern and advocacy, which you've run a really good campaign, and that was really good to see. And it's very similar to, this motion is very similar to the motion that was lost, so I'm really glad that it's come back. And again, it could have been avoided, and I'm sorry for the stress and the anxiety and all the horrible, bad feelings that it has caused. I'd like to acknowledge the 100 plus residents that have submitted feedback and engaged directly with the process. I'd also like to say, congrats on the petition there as well, over 2,000 signatures I think you managed to get, which demonstrates the depth and breadth of concern across the community. So everybody's clearly stated that it's not for profit and, it's not for private profit, and that this is a direct result of your advocacy. I welcome that the motion includes retention of the not-for-profit clause, and I like it that it's got the removal of the first right of refusal as well. So, just sorry that it's caused a lot of confusion and a lot of stress for you. And I would like to see the final lease make sure that it's got the community voice inside it, because it's been a really good community voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Any other councillors? No. I'd just like to add that I respectfully disagree with Councillor Thomas's assertion that the matter could have been resolved had original motion been supported. At that time we were presented, Council simply did not have the necessary data or clarity, particularly around the implication of a 5-year and a 10-year lease terms, the financial implications, and what each option would mean for our children, families and educators affected. It would not have been responsible, in my belief, to make such a significant decision without fully understanding the impacts and listening to the community. Since then, I want to commend the extensive community engagement that has taken place. The opportunity to meet with parents, educators, ECMS and concerned residents has been invaluable. It ensured that myself, Councillor Lam and Councillor Yingy could hear directly from those most affected. The decision to end the consultation process was not taken lightly at all, but the overwhelming response from the community made it clear that prolonging this issue would only increase the anxiety and distress already being felt. As Councillor Meredith mentioned, over 100 residents and over 2,000 signatures on the petition, so we had a clear responsibility to listen, and we did. So I think this outcome reflects the voices of the people we serve, and I believe it's the right decision. I just wanted to thank you, everyone here in the gallery, everyone downstairs watching online that have consulted with us, and I think this is the right step to take. So thank you very much, everyone. I'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. The motion is carried. I might be the only councillor who's going to be missing 20 calls and 20 emails a day now. So Lucas, I might ask you to now answer Councillor Yingy's question for the public.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. And given that we've just had the vote, I probably don't have a full comprehensive, consultation plan to hand. However, I will say that any consultation that we do, there's clearly a lot of interest in this one. We'll certainly be informing the community of that, just noting that in addition to that, Section 115 of the Act would still apply, so we'll still have to do a statutory 28-day consultation period regardless.
Sorry, so if I can just confirm, following this, now that it's been carried, we will have to do another consultation process with the revised?
Correct.
Yep. Okay.
Just noting, councillors, that of course you are resolving on the terms of the head lease, not of the sublease. The council decision is about the head lease, so that's an important distinction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Councillor Yingy. Could we get someone to call Councillor Semra back, please? He's probably missing us. Thank you, gallery. If there's anyone that wanted to leave, please feel free to. You can stay around and welcome to. Councillors, I also have another change to order of business, and also note that there's a significant community interest in the proposed, and what's the number of the security? 10.2, I believe. One second. No, just get it right. Do you have that? Yeah, so which is agenda item 10.2, notice of, oh no, it's not 10.2, sorry. Yeah, oh, maybe. You took my page, that's why. Like, where's my page? Sorry, it's, no. It is not this one. No.
To the report, no, sorry, you're right.
9.2. Sorry. So it's agenda item 9.2, not the notice of motion, which is the Footscray CBD security guard proposal. And with the consent of council, I wish to propose a change to the order of business in accordance with clause 19 of council's governance rules. Councillors, do I have your consent to bring agenda item 9.2 Footscray CBD security guard proposal as the next item of business? Yep. Thank you. I just wanted to make a mention, if there are people in the gallery downstairs, you're more than welcome to come upstairs. There's some seats here. If there's anyone that wants to join us, we'll wait a minute in case you want to come and join us upstairs. the gallery, we're just resuming in 2 minutes. Thank you for your patience. Thank you. We'll now resume the meeting. Thank you, gallery, for your patience and waiting. Moving on to agenda item 9.2, Footscray CBD Security Guard Proposal. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council 1 endorse the proposal for a security program for the Footscray CBD that includes engaging private security services to work in collaboration with local laws officers for a 6-month program. I note up there that it says program trial, so it's just a program on number 1. 2, note a request for quote RFQ procurement process will be undertaken to test the market for a suitable security service provider with demonstrated extensive community outreach experience and including a culturally appropriate approach. 3, direct council officers to consult with the community, all traders groups and interested traders in Footscray, community legal services and local community organisations to determine the extent and focus of the program during the RFQ process. 4, initiate regular meetings with health providers and community development organisations like the Iceberg Foundation and AfriCause to liaise with community, council and local laws to ensure a health and wellbeing first approach. 5, direct council officers to undertake an extensive evaluation, including perception of safety surveys, feedback from businesses, feedback from staff and contractors, foot traffic and spending data, feedback from support agencies and local community development organisations and the individuals they work with. 6, request a further report be prepared for council prior to the completion of the 6-month program, including recommendations for the next steps and how this program has integrated with the other activities of council and other local organisations and state-based agencies. And 7, writes to the relevant ministers to get a clear timeline on the new mental health clinic recently announced by the state government and the previous announcement about deploying the salvos/social workers in the Footscray CBD.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Pereira. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Yes? Just before, yep, what's your question? This is a question or clarification on the motion?
Both.
Yes, please.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you. I just guess I'm partly getting my head around this, but I'm just going to pull up the motion so that I can speak directly to some of the points in it. So the first one was, I guess I wanted to, and if it's okay, Mike, just to get an understanding, I guess just to get some idea around what the, so point 1 around number 3, around the consultation with the other trader groups and during the RFQ process. I'm just trying to understand what would that consultation process look like, and what are the potential timelines, if you know.
Thanks, Councillor Yee, and through you, Mr Mayor. So just having a look at this alternative recommendation here, or motion. So typically when you're going through an RFQ process, you wouldn't be engaging at the same time, because if you come back through an engagement process with a revised scope or different elements to what you went out to market with, then you've basically got to go through a whole RFQ process again, because it's impossible for anybody in the market to respond to that as it moves. Typically, the time for our standard engagement process is around about 4 weeks. We would then come back, we would be briefing councillors of results of any engagement process we go through, and then following a briefing, we then typically go to a council meeting for a formal decision. So in something like this, in relation to how, if we applied that 4-week engagement timeframe, which is the typical one, then we'd be potentially looking at this matter being considered in the chamber in either late September or October. One of the ideas behind the recommendation and the approach today was, I guess, in response to concerns and being agile. We appreciated that it didn't go through a formal consultation process, but we were looking at the program and trial approach as part of that engagement to which we've stated in the report, and a report would be prepared, seeking feedback along the way back into the chamber throughout this program.
And so,
could I just add something there to Mr. McIntosh? So if this proposal is carried, this motion, the first one it would be endorsing the proposal. So if the proposal is endorsed, we wouldn't bring the RFQ back to a council meeting for endorsement. But what we would do is have to do that consultation, which, as Mr. McIntosh said, will take, it'd be 4 weeks on the consultation, then we'd have to analyse it, then we have to come back to council with a proposal for to let you know through a briefing what the scope is, and then officers would put the RFQ out and assess it based on the findings and the discussion with councillors, but that wouldn't have to come back. The RFQ wouldn't come back through council.
it wouldn't?
No.
Okay. And what's the timeline? What's the regular RFQ timeline?
Thanks for your question, Councillor Ying, through the Mayor. Typically a 1 to 2 week process, so you'd be going out to market for a minimum of sort of 7 days, typically 1 to 2 weeks, and then you get whatever feedback the market responds with, and we assess that internally with a panel. Okay,
thank you. And the next one, and maybe I will direct this at Bernadette, if that's okay, just in terms of point number 1 around extensive, is it point number 1? Or 2, sorry. Just with regards to the demonstrated extensive community outreach experience, I wanted to get some idea of what we mean by that specifically. Just, I guess, in my mind, I'm wondering about the various security companies out there with extensive community outreach experience, and I'm just trying to understand how this may impact the RFQ process. So I guess just trying to understand, I guess, what the criteria for determining that is.
Well, I don't know how it'll impact the RFQ process, but unless officers already have like something ready to go, I don't know. So I'm assuming they'll have to put it together, put a process and a tender documentation together. But what I mean by community outreach experience is that there are the potential security operators understand or have experience in working with vulnerable people. You know, that we're not, we wouldn't be hopefully engaging security that perhaps typically does, nightclubs, or, where there's a clear distinction between, turfing people out of a space that, because the owner of that space doesn't want them there, versus working in a space where there's a lot of vulnerable people, and it requires a really sensitive approach. It requires a person, first approach, because there are a lot of vulnerabilities with the people that they will come in contact with. So it's really about saying that as part of that RFQ and whatever the documentation is, that it's requested of the submitters that this outreach experience is demonstrated. It's asked for, and that it's demonstrated back, and then that can be assessed, I guess, as part of the assessment criteria. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm thinking about, again, that extensive community outreach experience, and if we're, I guess, sort of where the limits might be with that, and how we will determine whether that particular, and maybe this one's for you, Mike, but that particular company has, I guess, the level of outreach experience we're seeking, and if we don't get anybody with that level of experience, I guess, I'm going to maybe, throw to you, Mike, but like what might be some reasonable actions for us to take in terms of progressing the RFQ? What would happen in that instance?
Can you just please rephrase the questions?
So in the event that we don't find a security company that has the demonstrated extensive community outreach experience we're looking for, what will happen and how does that impact the RFQ? And I guess I wonder, and maybe for you, Bernadette, since this motion's yours, what are your thoughts around, like, where might we go with that if we don't find that specifically?
Then I think we need to rethink the approach, because from my mind, having sort of a, if I term it like a security first approach, which, that's typically what security firms are doing, that's not integrating community development or like an assets-based community approach, or necessarily a person first or a human-centred approach. So, maybe it is that we need to rethink what the approach is, because it will, it has the potential then, like it's not integrated with all of those other activities or interventions and programs that council, has been sort of implementing, and has, like, where the works are in progress. So it's really, I guess, about if it can't be sort of immersed or part of like that kind of person-centred and community development approach, and we can't, we don't get any responses back that demonstrate that, then I think we need to rethink the approach.
I wonder whether we could, I mean, I'm just thinking about the language, and is it maybe like, do we maybe look at how that could, I mean, do we maybe preface it as a company with a demonstrated, I don't know, like a human approach or well-being, rather than specifically, I'm just conscious using the terminology of demonstrated extensive community outreach experience might kind of shrink the pool, and whether we sort of, if we're focusing more on that well-being or social human-centric approach, whether that might increase the pool for us a little bit more. Is that something?
Yeah, if you want to change that language a little around, instead of using the words community outreach experience and extensive, community-centred and community/human-centred approach, which would, it still needs to be demonstrated and hopefully extensive, but that would be fine with me. If I'm just looking at whether, as the mover, can I change sorry, through the Mayor, as the mover, am I able to change a couple of the words?
It doesn't have to be now.
You've moved your motion, so if you're wanting to change it, you would need to, it's your motion, so
I can
it hasn't
reword
been
that
voted
those
on
little
yet,
bits.
so you could
Could still
change
some
it,
of
but
the
I
wording.
would, Just point out, Mayor, that
The mover and the seconder have
things-
to agree to it.
Yes.
The mover and the seconder.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the things you're raising, Councillor Yingy, of course, the officers would obviously be having to take, it's our job to take that into account and make sure that we find the right. So the seconder would need to agree as well. Thank you, Lucas Gosling.
That's Elena, I think so. Sorry, she's
Councillor
agreeing,
Pereira,
Elena's agreeing.
agrees. Councillor Pereira agrees to change.
I was just asking questions, trying to get some clarity around, yeah. Just
I mean,
thinking.
yeah, I'm happy to chat. So number 2 would read, note a request for quote RFQ procurement process will be undertaken to test the market for a suitable security service provider with demonstrated extensive community/human-centred approach and delete outreach experience. Oh, sorry, human-centred, yeah, delete and culturally appropriate approach. Oh, sorry, which is at the end there. So if you just take out the words, yeah, and you can take out the first approach after human-centred, if you like. No, sorry, leave that last one in there. That's all right. So it would say community-centred and yeah, and take out the word approach, yep, and culturally centred approach at the end. Yep. Culturally appropriate approach. Yeah. Take out that last word centred. Yep. Thank you.
Just while that's happening, I just wanted to make sure that all councillors have received the alternate motion that Councillor Thomas sent through at about 5:46 p.m. Has everyone received that? Oh. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I note that it's been slightly changed, so I was just confirming. So.
I suggest the mover read out the changed section and then the seconder could
Seconded.
advise that she agrees with it or not.
Okay, so just the second, point number 2, you mean? Yep, okay. Note, a request for quote RFQ procurement process will be undertaken to test the market for a suitable security service provider with demonstrated extensive community/human-centred and culturally appropriate approach. Maybe it should say with a demonstrated extensive community, human-centred and culturally appropriate approach. Just to be grammatically more correct, I think. Sorry, what does the seconder need to do? Yeah.
Is the seconder okay with the changes? Yes. Thank you. Noted. Is there any other questions or points of clarifications? That's all. Any other councillors? Now, would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I guess I will. Thanks. So there's a lot going on in the Footscray CBD, and some of it's not great and some of it's fantastic. And, you know, I note there was a really nice article in The Age on the weekend about all of the various, restaurants and cafes and things that are operating. We've got a lot of engaged traders, but we also have many who are disengaged or land banking or unconcerned about contributing to the active and positive fabric of the CBD. People are continuing to shop, to hang out, to visit cafes, restaurants and bars, listen to music and gather together and socialise locally. The Footscray CBD belongs to all of us, traders, residents, shoppers, visitors and those who are living in our streets and communal spaces. We know that over the past 18 months or so, global and national stresses have moved into Footscray and are having an impact on people who visit, live and work in the CBD. The Footscray traders have told Council that they are feeling unsafe and Council does need to respond in some way. And we're working on a number of approaches raised by motions from Councillors Semra and Pereira and outlined by Council officers tonight in response to public questions. And we should consider this proposal, I really think, once the work on these other initiatives, such as the Footscray Revitalisation Lead, is finalised. However, I'm trying to offer sort of a bit of a compromise, I think, tonight. Our local laws officers have been working closely with health and wellbeing agencies and sensitively with individuals and their families. We've increased our cleansing services many times over, we're engaging with land bankers and we're using all the instruments and tools available to help us to get development happening. Despite everything that Council is and has been doing, the systems that support people living on the margins of our community are failing and/or are overloaded, and people are falling through the cracks. They have nowhere to turn and are living their lives out in the open in our communal spaces. A security-first approach or a security-only approach won't work. We need a holistic approach to what is happening. Council's working on introducing a range of measures that include safety for all, supporting people who need some additional help with things like housing, employment, mental and physical health and poverty. Whilst, as I mentioned earlier, Council's local laws officers are working as sensitively as possible with vulnerable people, I have concerns about initiating security-based approaches without fulsome evidence and in isolation of other more person-centred approaches. The responses to the public questions tonight included reference to Council's social justice framework, and I didn't see that referenced in the officer report. The report also mentions that the proposal supports the establishment of the State Government Health Hub, but is also silent on how this will actually be realised in practice, especially given that the Health Hub details have not been released and at this stage it's sort of a media release plus. The need for a sustained effort referenced in the officer report, and I quote, "an ongoing, sustained and collaborative approach is required to change habits and make meaningful change." And I can't see how this approach, like the original motion, lives up to the collaborative approach that is required. So that's why I'm offering this alternative. I think the lack of consultation with the broader community on this particular issue is a concern. I know that it's been raised by a group of traders, but our CBD area, as I mentioned earlier, belongs to a wider group of people. And the consultation with the community proposed in my motion seeks to strengthen the program and ensure that the focus remains on the welfare of all people who use the Footscray CBD, avoids any heavy-handedness and is supported by the community. I'd just like to quote from something that was written by West Justice earlier this year following the tragic shooting of Abdi Fattar in April. And I quote, they said, "Now more than ever, people need early intervention and prevention services for health, mental health, financial counselling, social work, legal help and more. People experiencing mental ill health and other disadvantage deserve specialised, immediate and ongoing care that treats their issues at the root cause." I'm asking for support from councillors to place this proposal in the broader context of support and assistance for people experiencing disadvantage while also providing support for the traders. My motion doesn't remove the original motion, but rather ensures that it incorporates consultation and a community development approach. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Yes, we're being called on to be proactive and innovative, and I don't think we have to be limited to our ordinary formal consultation process. The motion allows for a more dynamic approach where we take this as the general direction and we integrate community feedback from now and throughout the program, which has been indicated as our intention based on the answers provided during public question time. This motion reflects a genuine concern shared by many, the need for Footscray to feel safer and more welcoming for everybody. But it's also critical that we name what's really happening here and not just what we see on the surface. What we're witnessing in Footscray is not a failure of community, It's a failure of infrastructure, of housing, of mental health systems, of cost of living relief. These are complex systemic issues and they can't be solved by a security program alone. Engaging private security as part of a 6-month program is a short-term response, but if we're serious about community wellbeing, then that response has to come with clear health and community first framework, not in place of one. I welcome the motion's inclusion of monthly meetings with health and community development organisations and a push for meaningful community collaboration, including with all traders, and it has to be more than a box ticking process. People in Footscray, including those doing it rough, need to be listened to and not just watched and moved on. It's incumbent upon us to leapfrog the Melbourne model and create a pro-social response. It's also essential that we pursue real action from the state government. If there's commitment for mental health clinics and outreach programs in Footscray, then we need clear timelines and not vague announcements. Safety is not just about presence, it's about support, it's about dignity, trust and investment in people. Let's make sure that our response reflects that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Are there any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Meredith.
Yep. All right, I'll brief down my notes because there's like far too much, which is what I normally do. So I think what we're seeing in Footscray is the visible outcome of like systemic failure. Yes, there are people living on the streets. There are criminals there as well. They're not this like same. State and federal governments have failed to invest in the fundamentals: housing, mental health, addiction treatment, community safety. I feel like our governments have actually failed Footscray, have failed our communities, have failed the West. We need upstream investment, not just downstream responses. Footscray has not received the sustained, coordinated support it deserves, and the people are seeing that. Mental health and addiction services are chronically underfunded and stretched. The housing crisis is pushing people more into hardship and homelessness. The Footscray interchange, first proposed in 2012, still no commitment. Community safety concerns are rising, crime has escalated. This is the human, economic and social cost of political neglect. There is no will there. They're not helping at the moment, and I'd like to see some more assistance for everybody. I do welcome the upcoming $350,000 state government commitment to establish the health and outreach hub in Footscray. That doesn't provide long-term funding. The hub is not expected to be operational until later this year, early next year. There's no full scope, no timeline known. We will have the Footscray Hospital coming up as well. Again, that services the whole of the West. So again, I just don't think that there is significant amount of investment. I'd like to see that 350 way higher than that to service the people. I'd like to see, just much more investment. The 6-month private security is, it's not a solution. It's not about enforcement. I like this motion because it's got the cultural connection and the awareness there as well. It's got a little bit more of the details. I would like to see early intervention, a housing first approach, and local government can't do this alone. I think that's the main message, is that we are being told to just carry the baton, and I think that we need the other levels of government to step up. And because Footscray matters, the people here matter, we deserve more, we deserve lasting systemic change and support. And I do acknowledge that there are huge safety concerns in Footscray, but there are way more issues than just the crime that is escalating. There's a whole range of issues, and we need to be mindful of that.
Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion?
Mayor, could I just say one thing just about the wording of the number 1? There's still the word trial at the end, and I asked for that to be removed.
Could you just say that again for the team?
Sorry, just at number 1, right at the last word, trial, could that word be removed? Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that okay now for you?
Yeah, that's right.
Is the seconder okay with that? Yes? Yep. Okay. If there's no other councillors, I'd like to add my view on this. This alternative motion proposed by Councillor Thomas. I would like to express my opposition to it regarding the security patrols or trial in the Footscray CBD. In my opinion, the issue has already undergone extensive community engagement and consultation for over many months. Since at least March 2025, all councillors, including Councillor Thomas, who's the ward councillor for Footscray, have been part of coordinated discussions involving traders, business operators in the Nicholson Street Mall and surrounds. We've met with community and cultural leaders, including representatives from the African Australian community, respected leaders like Dr. Burhan and many other community groups and leaders. We've met with Victoria Police, council officers and representatives from the security provider, who I know is present here in the gallery today. We met with local MP Katie Hall, who, as everyone's mentioned, has secured $350,000 in the state government funding to establish a mental health and outreach hub in the heart of Footscray. I believe the process has been transparent, inclusive and continuous, not rushed or premature at all. The concerns of the community have been consistent and clear, who have said amongst many things they do not feel safe. They have said they need outreach and security to protect staff, their families, customers and the community. We've had a recent death and they've pleaded with us for help. I believe that we've listened and we've responded, not just with enforcement, but with a multi-layered solution. Council is finalising arrangements to lease Metro Western Nicholson Street Mall to bring in the Salvation Army with the state government and other possible outreach services to support vulnerable individuals. The state-funded mental health and crisis support hub will provide a critical safety net. The proposed security patrols are intended to complement these efforts with a non-enforcement visible safety presence, particularly during peak periods. The proposal is not about a policing operation and it's not about targeting any one group. It's about creating a safe, welcoming environment for all, especially families, workers and vulnerable residents. I want to be quite clear on this. So this is not only about community perception. There have been documented assaults on council staff in the area, as well as staff of traders who have reported being assaulted in the mall. We also have an occupational health and safety obligation to protect our own employees, just as we do with our residents and traders. I believe delaying or prolonging this process by adopting this alternative motion proposed by Councillor Thomas now would undermine months of genuine community engagement, disregard clear requests made directly to councillors, including to Councillor Thomas as a local ward representative, risk further harm to council staff and community members, particularly in a location that has already seen serious incidents. I think it's a balanced, time-limited trial based on community needs and informed by best practice models from not only the City of Melbourne, but Frankston, Stonnington, and we've had consultation with Port Phillip Council. We're not proposing permanent change. We are trialling a measured intervention in response to sustained and growing concerns. And Council have clearly indicated, and I'll probably read out from the question time, that our approach is shaped by Council's social justice framework, which promotes respectful and equitable engagement in public space. So this is about acting responsibly, compassionately and decisively. I reject the alternative motion and support the original officer recommendation so we can move forward with confidence, clarity and the backing of our community. Thank you. So, are there any other councillors who'd like to speak to the motion?
Can I have a point of clarification?
Sure, you may.
Is it too late to suggest amendments to this motion?
No, you haven't. The motion hasn't been voted on yet. So if the mover and the seconder agree to any changes, Councillor Semra, you can suggest them now.
Yeah, because I have honestly, a few issues with the with this as it stands. In particular, stating that consultations take place during an RFQ process. I think that that like technically can't happen. And I see this as potentially, prolonging the implementation of this, this important measure that the community has been asking for a while. And I think there's a few assumptions that the motion makes that the security guards are in some way separate to council. I think, the vote on the security proposal, for me, it's not about increasing enforcement. I think as we heard from officers, or introducing a heavy-handed policing presence. It's about providing a measured, community-informed response to real concerns around safety, amenity, and public safety. When I door knocked a couple of months ago, community safety came up time and time again. Residents overwhelmingly wanted council to take the initiative. Council already has existing accountability mechanisms and strong engagement with stakeholders, including direct dialogue with traders, residents, and community organisations. The proposal is consistent with the way we've deployed passive security support for events and other precincts across the city. The security proposal, will not. This isn't the police, right? It'll be passive, non-enforcement focused, have no powers to arrest, no authority to use force, and cannot request personal information, as highlighted by Mike, are governed by the Private Security Act and will remain answerable to council, not external bodies. We'll work alongside our local laws officers, but not duplicate or interfere with their role. We have a social justice charter. We are not adopting a Melbourne model or seeking any legislative change. This is an operational measure, as highlighted, shaped through the community's development, through council's community development ethos, and assessed against council's existing inclusion, amenity, and community wellbeing targets, as we heard before from officers. And with the new Footscray revitalisation lead coming into effect recently, this is, I believe, a deliberate coordination established to ensure all initiatives from economic development to safety, well-being are aligned, integrated, and supportive of one another. So I think it's important to be clear. This proposal is not a threat to our care-led, rights-based approach. It is a response to consistent concerns raised by staff and traders, available incident data, and declining community perceptions of safety. It is possible and necessary to prioritise safety without compromising on compassion, care, or community values. I believe, the way it stands is responsible, limited, and accountable way forward, and it is not a new proposal. This has been going on for the past few weeks and months at a considerable cost to our traders and local groups, and I think it's time, that at least council taking over, then there's a level of structure, there's a level of a community approach that we and officers deal with every day. The work builds on efforts already in motion. Back in March, I brought forward a motion titled Enhancing Community Safety and Wellbeing, which called for greater investment in mental health and outreach services. I'm proud to say we've already seen tangible outcomes from that motion, including increased resources in outreach support and a stronger whole of council focus on preventative approaches. So to the mover and seconder, those are my concerns, and I think as it stands, it makes a few assumptions that I think don't necessarily stand when weighed against everything we've heard from our officers and a lot of the policies and that underpin how we operate as a council. And it's not the security here and council there. Our local laws officers will be with the security guards, and there has been, as we all were, in meetings with traders as well as community leaders in Burhan, from Africors, and a few others, pleading for this to come into place. And I just think as it stands, we unknowingly duplicate some of the work that will take place because of council's procedures, and I think not answer what the community wants right now. That's, I guess, my issues with this in particular, where it comes to number 3. In regards to the RFU process and the consultation happening at the same time, and so yeah, those are my issues.
Thank you, Councillor Semra. Do you want to ask the mover and seconder to change anything, or you just want your considerations to be heard by them?
So I think my considerations to be heard, a large part would be number 3, as in my, prolong this process unnecessarily, and also just the assumptions that the motion, I think, inherently makes.
Thank you. Councillor Meredith, I think you're on the screen. Did you want to add something? Then I'll move to Councillor.
I think I just wanted to acknowledge that there's just not one voice in the community, that there are multitude of voices, and we've got 2 motions that are coming up on the same topic, and there are differing opinions and different people that go for both. And so I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think there's just a choice. Both are going to ask for the same thing, just in different ways. And, and that's basically it. I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think it's just a choice on what we're going to be making. We're all choosing security. We're all choosing that.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. We'll move to Councillor Pereira, then we'll get to you, Councillor Semra.
Yeah, I was going to, I'm open to talking about what the wording of the motion is, obviously, and because I feel like all it's trying to do is actually articulate a lot of the responses that were given in question time, which will be lost unless people, kind of read through all of that and anticipate that that is the background to the other motion. It really just brings it here and helps clarify things for our community. We all know that people will keep consulting with us. They will keep emailing us about all of these issues and more. And I don't think it needs to be the same kind of consultation process that we run for strategies and other things. We've already indicated an intention to be listening throughout the program and be making sure that it is responding to community sensibility and expectations and all of those things. So my interpretation of this wording is not that it is going to extend the process, which is why it specifically says that whatever consultation we run, we want it to fit within the process that is otherwise established, because we recognise the urgency in the community.
Yeah.
That's what this motion is trying to propose.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Councillor Semra.
I think it's important that we manage expectations. We don't place an expectation of, I think health and well-being first approach for more security guards, for, otherwise visas. So I'm just trying to essentially ensure that we don't duplicate any work that's already been done through our... I would support this if we amend number 3. I would say to remove it entirely. I would also suggest Yeah, so yeah, I will support it if we remove number 3.
So maybe I'll ask the mover first and then the seconder if you are okay to delete the entire contents of number 3.
I think removing the entire contents of number 3 is in direct contrast to the conversation that we just had about the Bulldogs Community Childcare Centre, where all of the sort of conversation was around how important it is to consult with the community in whatever way it is, and people who are affected, people who are interested, people who live in the area. So I'm kind of loath to do that, because I think consultation is really, really important. And I think, as Councillor Merida said, consultation in a broad sense, not sort of with one, simply with one part of the community. So I do think that's a really important part of the process. I know we've spoken to, some of the traders a couple of times. I wasn't able to go to the last meeting. But there are, as I said earlier, the CBD belongs to everybody. The traders are obviously a very important group within the CBD area. So I think not consulting with the community on this, it is a significant shift in how council approaches support for various sectors in our community. Yes, we have security here at our council meetings, I understand that. But this is kind of shifting us into a new space. Our local laws officers are, tasked with, sort of a specific role in dealing with, in inverted commas, some of the issues that are happening down in the Footscray CBD. And, they've, I guess, over time, they have really probably, I think they've built their skills and experience, and they've really learned well how to collaborate with service providers and community organisations and the traders, and to really be sensitive to the vulnerabilities of the people that I guess this report and the original motion is sort of directed to, I suppose. So for me, taking out that completely, that the consultation, like whole scale, maybe rewording it in some way, but I'm really conscious that yes, we've spoken to, a group within the community, but we haven't spoken to, sort of more a wider group of people who will legitimately have a concern about introducing a security aspect by council into the space. And I think we've got to be conscious of that and mindful of that as well. So I don't know what the seconder thinks.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the seconder, please, and then we'll get to you, Councillor Simmer.
I mean, I would be more comfortable with rewording it rather than removing it. And perhaps it's just about actually making it broader rather than saying we're going to do it during the RFQ process if there's a impression that that's going to compromise that process, and actually just say that we commit to continuous consultation and collaboration with, the rest of those stakeholders, which we've already indicated is our intention through the public question time answers. So, but I think being very upfront about the fact that this is a collaboration between council and community is really important, and people need to feel that they have agency and are part of the conversation rather than having things being done to them. We have to do things with community.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. So basically, Councillor Simmer, they have said no to removing that. Is there something you want to add?
Sorry, just before we move on, So if it was reworded to perhaps pick up on Councillor Pereira's suggestion, to say, direct council officers to consult with the community, all trader groups and interested traders in Footscray, community legal services and local community organisations during the
Throughout the
program. And
delete the rest.
sorry, I'm just thinking
Can
off
I,
the
can I
top of
just
my
interrupt
head.
and, can I just interrupt and say, I think his ask was if you could remove it or not reword it. That's my understanding, unless.
But if it's
Councillor
reworded, then Councillor Semra may have a different view, because I think his focus is on the RFQ process. So I'm just trying to
Councillor Semra,
reword
would you
it
like to
perhaps
add to
remove
that, please?
To get back to what I said, there were a few things I highlighted, and I think the biggest issue that I'm seeing, specifically what you said, Councillor Thomas, is we've already had considerable consultation, and I believe that there are going to be a lot of traders, a lot of community people that will then come to us and say, did you not value our voice? Because I think what's happening is you are limiting their voice by referring to them as a small group. It was a continuous process.
Well, I'm just saying that it's not the 90,000 people in the municipality. You know, it's small in number compared to everyone.
I'm just
who might,
conscious that this is not a forum for these type of discussions. Councillor Semra asked for a removal of one of the items in the motions. I think the mover and seconder have indicated.
I'd like to raise a point of
so-
order. He asked for it to be removed, or originally I think reworded. So
Okay,
I'm
so-
trying to reword it so that
Yep.
Councillor Semra
That's
may
fine.
be.
So if
happy
we can
with that.
change it to local community
If we remove the
organisation
end bit
throughout the program.
remove the
Yep,
end bit
yep.
during the RFQ process, and it says.
If we're going to say throughout the program, then I'm happy with that, because at least it doesn't, I guess, infer that we haven't had that consultation, and now we're going to start the consultation, and all the voices that we've spoken to don't necessarily matter.
Oh, no, and that's absolutely not the intention, is it not to say that the voices that we have
So
heard from
we'll
don't
remove,
matter?
so I'm happy, extent and focus of the program, remove during the RFQ process.
Yeah.
Yep,
So.
and keep going, sorry, delete it up to the first program,
Wait,
So is that a full stop
local
after the
community
word
organisation
program?
Throughout the program.
throughout the program, full stop.
Yeah, yep, all that will go throughout the program. Yep. To not really limit it to one thing.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. And I think it's important to say that we're here because we have heard loud and clear from those people, and we want to move forward with something that reflects all of the feedback we've had to date. This is just saying that we will continue to listen moving forward.
That's right, because I do agree with the mayor in the sense that, we did have considerable consultation from the beginning of the year. This is not a new proposal. It's been happening for a few weeks, few months, under considerable cost to traders and community people. So this is us essentially showing leadership and initiative.
Responding to that. Thank you.
Well, I mean, with that change being
Can I get some
done,
clarity?
just before you do, I wanted some clarity on that, because that change says direct council officers to consult with the community, all trader groups and interested traders in Footscray, community legal services and local community organisations throughout the program. What do you want the council officers to consult these groups on exactly?
Well, the nature of the program and how it's progressing, how it's being rolled out, are there any early results? Are there any other ideas that could be inputted into how it's being rolled out? So that it's not sort of at the end of the program, there's a presentation of some results, but it's sort of like almost an action research kind of approach where, if something is happening and traders or one of the community legal services comes and says, oh, look, we've noticed this is happening, we'd like to input that into the program, then that could be brought into the program, and the program could be, switched or, looked at slightly differently. So,
My further question to that will then be item 4 and 5. How is that different than you're addressing that in the third by directing council officers? How is 4 and 5 different? Why would we need them then?
because I guess the number 3 is trying to be broad. Okay, so it's about us initiating a consultation process, but also number 4 is about having specific meetings with those health service providers, and it might be that those regular meetings could be about a specific individual and what services might be related to assisting that individual, whereas we're not going to consult with the broader community about an individual person. We're going to consult about number 3 is about the program, and number 4 is about what sort of like the next layer down in that program, about some of the more finer details or something about how to specifically assist a person in a particular way. So it's about, one is about consultation and one is more about, I guess, building relationships and understanding a little more of that fine-grained detail about what's happening on the ground as well. So it's about supporting, number 4 is about supporting.
Could I just interrupt through the Mayor? This process that we're going through around discussion and questions and answers is not the purpose of finalising this notice of motion, and we're very close to breaching our own governance laws. So I would recommend to the Mayor that he puts the motion to the vote. I'm not sure, I've got 2 governance people there nodding at me, but we're very close to the line here, councillors. Yeah.
So does
All
that
right.
mean
I didn't want any further
clarity.
clarifications because we've just been told we might be breaching governance rules. So unless it's something directly relating to her notice of motion, is that what you're going to ask her about?
I just want to clarify before we vote, because based on the one and only concern I have with item number 3 is just to clarify that, so can I just make sure that I'm interpreting it correctly then? With item number 3, does this mean that this RFQ, this entire motion and process will move straight to the RFQ process? So we're taking it straight from here to RFQ. I just want to be clear, because I guess
what it's saying now.
What Mohammed was saying, and one of the concerns I had was around inaction and wondering whether, and the delays to taking action. And so does this now mean that we will go, if it passes, that it will progress straight to the RFQ process and the engagement will be what the original motion was intending to do anyway, which is to continue to have conversations with traders and community as the program progresses? If you can just clarify that, that'd be great.
Well, number 3 is about continue, throughout the program, consulting, and number 1 and 2 is going straight out for RFQ. But I don't think the original motion doesn't talk about consultation. So this is inserting that in. But yeah, so it's kind of going to the original. 1 and 2 is directly from the original motion.
And so, Mike,
3 to
can you
7 are different
confirm?
ones.
Sorry, so you can confirm that we won't have the delays that were originally, I think, potentially going to be there.
Thanks, Councillor Ian, through the Mayor. The changes that you've made to point 3 have fundamentally changed the intent, which was to do it both in parallel with the RFQ. There's no mention of the RFQ in point 3 anymore. So the way I interpret that is that we note the request for the RFQ, we go out, and then throughout the program, we continue to consult with the community or trader groups and interested parties in Footscray.
You're done with the clarification? Okay. Yeah, I would now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. So the motion is carried. Has it come up? Has that been submitted? Yep, so the motion is... Yep, motion is carried. All right. So we'll move on to item agenda 9.3. Is that the next item on the...
I think we have to do 9.1.
Oh, we've got to go back to rates and charges, yeah. That's fine. We'll move on to item agenda 9.1, rates and charges, financial hardship policy. I'll call for a councillor to move the motion. Councillor Meredith.
The Council adopts the revised rates and charges financial hardship policy 2025 shown in attachment 1.
I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Thomas. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Nope. Would the mover like to speak to the motion? Nope. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Formally seconded. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? I'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. The motion is carried. We'll now move on to, let's say we've done 9.2. Agenda item 9.3, review of council delegations 2025. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas.
That Council, 1, in the exercise of the powers conferred by Section 11(1) of the Local Government Act 2020, the Act, and other legislation referred to in the draft S5 Instrument of Delegation to the Chief Executive Officer shown at Attachment 1, resolves that A, there be delegated to the members of council staff holding, acting in or performing the duties of the officers or positions referred to in the attached draft S5 Instrument of Delegation to the Chief Executive Officer, the powers, duties and functions set out in that instrument, subject to the conditions and limitations specified in that instrument. B, the instrument comes into force immediately upon the common seal of council being affixed to the instrument. C, on the coming into force of the instrument, all previous delegations to the Chief Executive Officer are revoked. And D, the duties and functions set out in the instrument must be performed and the powers set out in the instruments must be executed in accordance with any guidelines or policies of council that it may from time to time adopt. 2, in the exercise of the powers conferred by the legislation referred to in the draft S6 Instrument of Delegation to members of council staff as shown at Attachment 2, resolves that A, there be delegated to the members of council staff holding, acting in or performing the duties of the officers or positions referred to in the attached draft S6 Instrument of Delegation to members of council staff, the powers, duties and functions set out in that instrument, subject to the conditions and limitations specified in that instrument. B, the instruments come into force immediately upon the common seal of council being affixed to the instrument. C, on the coming into force of the instrument, all previous delegations to members of council staff brackets other than the Chief Executive Officer brackets are revoked, and D, the duties and functions set out in the instrument must be performed and the powers set out in the instrument must be executed in accordance with any guidelines or policies of council that it may from time to time adopt. 3, in the exercise of the powers conferred by Section 437(2) of the Environment Protection Act 2017 and the Instrument of Delegation of the Environment Protection Authority under the Act dated 4 June 2021, as shown at Attachment 3, resolves that A, there be delegated to the members of council staff holding, acting in or performing the duties of the officers or positions referred to in the attached S6 Draft Instrument of Delegation to members of council staff, the powers, duties and functions set out in that instrument, subject to the conditions and limitations specified in that instrument. B, the instrument comes into force immediately upon the common seal of council being affixed to the instrument, and C, the duties and functions set out in the instrument must be performed, and the powers set out in the instruments must be executed in accordance with any guidelines or policies of council that it may from time to time adopt. 4, in the exercise of the powers conferred by Section 63 and Section 64 of the Local Government Act 2020 and the instrument of delegation to the City Development Delegated Committee, as shown at Attachment 4, and the instrument of delegation to the Lead-West Joint Delegated Committee, as shown at Attachment 5, resolves that A, there be delegated to the members appointed to the City Development Delegated Committee and Lead-West Joint Delegated Committee the powers, duties and functions set out in those instruments, subject to the conditions and limits specified in those instruments. Does that make sense? Subject to the conditions and limited specified in those instruments. It does? Okay. B, the instruments come into force immediately upon the common seal of council being affixed to the instruments. C, on the coming into force of the instrument, all previous delegations to the City Development Delegated Committee and Lead-West Joint Delegated Committee are revoked. And D, the duties and functions set out in the instrument must be performed, and the powers set out in the instrument must be executed in accordance with any guidelines or policies of council that it may from time to time adopt.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Semra. Are there any questions or points of clarification? No. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? No. I'll now put the motion to your vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. Motion is carried. Agenda item 9.4, World Humanistic Cities Network, General Assembly, November 2025, Councillor attendance. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yengi.
Thank you. That council endorses Maribyrnong City Council registering as a member for the World Humanistic Cities Network, resolves to approve the attendance and participation of Councillor Cook Lam in the World Humanistic Cities Network General Assembly, inclusive of travel within the Republic of Korea from the 5th to 8th of November 2025. That council notes that Councillor Cook Lam's travel, accommodation, local transportation, meals and cultural tour program expenses will be met by the World Humanistic Cities Network. God, what a tongue tie. Notes that any further travel expenses incurred by Councillor Cook Lam will be recorded in Council's travel register in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act 2020, and notes that Councillor Cook Lam will be required to present a written report to Council on the key learnings for Maribyrnong City Council within 2 months of attendance, inclusive of recording all Council incurred travel expenses associated with the attendance at this General Assembly.
I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. Any questions or points of clarification? No. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Not extensively, just to say that this is a really wonderful opportunity for Councillor Lam and Maribyrnong City Council to build a really close relationship with South Korea. I know that over the years, Councillor Lam has engaged with the consulate and they've become quite good friends of Maribyrnong City Council. We have a number of residents from the Korea Republic residing in our municipality. There's been some past engagement with regards to, increasing business trading in this area as well. So yeah, I think this is just a great way, and obviously from the invitation that's come from the consulate, it shows to the relationship that we've developed and are continuing to develop with the Republic of Korea. And so, yeah, this is a really wonderful opportunity for us, and I'm sure there'll be some really wonderful learnings that Councillor Lam will bring back to share with us, and hopefully, I guess, opportunities for us to implement, better ways of working.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just briefly, yeah, everything that Councillor Yengi has said, and there's two things that I really like about this one is that it costs council nothing, so we're not paying for anything, so that's fantastic news. And Councillor Lamb will continue to build her relationship over there as well and bring that report back about the learnings, which is fantastic. And yeah, it's good.
Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? No. I'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. The motion is carried. Sorry.
Sorry, the vote didn't come up, but
Oh,
it came up.
delayed. Moving on to agenda item 9.5, awarding of contract number 1307-25, provision of graffiti removal services. I'll call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yengi.
That council resolved to award contract number 1307-25, provision of graffiti removal services to Clean It Proprietary Limited, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to execute contract number 1307-25, provision of graffiti removal services to Clean It Proprietary Limited. Note that the contract is based on a schedule of rates for the estimated total spend of $3,388,991, excluding GST, for a maximum 7-year term. And note the contract is comprised of an initial term of 3 years plus 2 by 2 year options at a cost of $455,955 in year 1, $465,211 in year 2, $474,408 in year 3, $483,941 in year 4, option 1, $493,588 in year 5, $503,366 in year 6, option 2, and $513,521 in year 7.
Thank you. I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Pereira. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
The seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? I'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. The motion is carried. We'll move on to agenda item 9.6, awarding of contract number 1308-25, RecWest and Shorten Reserve, Demolition and Civil Works. I call for a councillor to move the motion. Councillor Semra.
That council awards contract number 130825, RecWest and Shorten Reserve, Demolition and Civil Works to Ireland Brown Constructions Pty Ltd for the total contract sum of $2,287,700, excluding GST. 2, notes the forward funding commitment as part of the 2025-26 and 2026-27 and 2027-28 Capital Works Program under the larger RecWest Shorten Reserve project. 3, authorizes the Chief Executive Officer to execute contract number 130825, RecWest and Shorten Reserve, Demolition and Civil Works to Ireland Brown Constructions Pty Ltd for the total contract sum of $2,287,700, excluding GST. And 4, authorize the Chief Executive Officer to approve variations to this contract.
Thank you. I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Lamb. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
No.
Formally
Moved.
moved, yeah. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? No. I'll just add that, I think this would be a very welcome relief for people down in West Footscray, because it's been a long time coming, and 3 or 4 years, whatever the time frame is, or longer. So I think it will be very welcome. So thank you, Council, for getting this actioned. We'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. The motion is carried. We'll move on to item agenda 9.7, geographic naming proposal, Sarah Carter Kindergarten. I'll call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Lam.
Office recommendation that Council Number 1 notice the outcome of the community engagement process for the proposing naming of Sarah Carter Kindergarten. Number 2, formally endorse the name Sarah Carter Kindergarten as the name for the newly developed kindergarten, which form part of the Maribyrnong Community Centre, Number 9, Randall Street, Maribyrnong. Number 3, request the Chief Executive Officer to submit the naming proposal to Geographic Name Victoria for registration. And number 4, noted that Council officers will write to the respondents, notifying them of the Council's decision.
Thank you. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. Are there any questions or points of clarification? No. Would the mover like to speak to a motion?
Yes, briefly. Everybody know that, like the former mayor, former councillor Sarah Carter, behind me, there's a whole rock there, and it did a wonderful contribution to the city of Maribyrnong, from the young, from the mature age, people here, residents in the community, remember of her with significance as a 3-time mayor and a councillor for 16 years. So that is her great contribution to all community, and I'm glad to see that. Now, this is one of her wards, Riverwood. We are naming her the kindergarten, Sarah Carter Kindergarten. And thank you very much for all the staff and who's involved on this such as, hard-working contribution as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? No. I'll just reiterate what Councillor Lam has said, and it's fantastic that we're naming the Maribyrnong Kindergarten after Sarah Carter, a rightful honour amongst all the other things that this council has done. So I can't wait for it to be inaugurated. I'd now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your vote. The motion is carried. Move on to agenda item 9.8, Audit and Risk Committee Charter Review. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yengi.
That council endorse the review of the Audit and Risk Charter shown at attachment 1.
I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Lam. Are there any questions, points of clarifications? No. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formal second.
Any other councillors like to speak to the motion? I'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your vote. Motion is carried. We'll move on to agenda item 9.9, Audit and Risk Committee Biannual Report, May 2025. I'll call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Semra.
The council endorse the Audit and Risk Committee Biannual Report, May 2025, shown at attachment 1.
Thank you. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Any other councillors like to speak to the motion? No. I'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. The motion is carried. Moving on to agenda item 9.10, Local Law Review, Engagement Outcomes and Draft Local Law. I'll call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas.
That Council 1 endorse the draft local law shown at attachment 4 for the purposes of community engagement, and 2, note that following the community engagement process, a final report will be presented to Council in October 2025 to adopt the draft local law.
Thank you. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Semra. Are there any questions or points of clarification? No. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Just say a couple of things quickly. There's been a thank you to the officers who have done a lot of work in reworking this document. It's much more user-friendly now. The language is much more, I think, in plain English. I can follow it, so I'm hoping that everybody out there can follow it as well. They've done some work on bringing in some, I think, new ideas that, you know, are sort of, you know, these are sort of, I think they're 4-year or 10-year, I've just forgotten, reviews. Anyone want to help me? 4? Yep. You know, so this is the first time in 4 years that it's been reviewed. And of course, things change, ideas change about how we might approach developing local laws, which are effectively, you know, council-based and council-centred laws. So thank you to the officers for, you know, not just reviewing it and updating the language, but reviewing it and bringing in those new ideas and new approaches. You know, some of them are much more sensitive approaches, given, you know, some of the things we've talked about earlier tonight. So I would encourage everyone to have a look at it and give us your best feedback, and so that we can have sort of the best document that we can and the most relevant document for the next 4 years. Thanks.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? No.
Yep.
Yes, Councillor Meredith.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that it's really well written, and I also really like the language used, and I think it's designed to future-proof our city as well as it's growing. Population growth, increased density, so it's written to the changes that are coming up as well. So yeah, thank you to officers for writing it and putting it together. It's good.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. I'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. The motion is carried. Moving on to item agenda 9.11, City Futures Council Plan Annual Progress Report. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Lamb.
Note the progress of the action 231, 232, 233, 234, 327, and 421 of the Council Plan 2021 to 25 in the 2023 to 24 financial year.
Thank you. I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. Are there any questions or points of clarification? No. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yes, briefly. I would like to thank you, the directors, Planning and Environment, Mike McIntosh, and his manager, Bruce Marshall, that putting so much work into this. And I can say that from 21st to 25th, the council provide a number of programs to support the community and the local business engagement, and all the, you know, a lot of successful building resilient tourism, all that to improving the local economies at the city of Maribyrnong. And this is a hard work is have payoff for all that. And I see, you can see that number of councillors attend to a number of festivals and to the communities. There's a lot of positive out there. I know there's some negative talk about the CBD before, but there's a lot of positive with community involvement with festivals and other programs through the city of Maribyrnong. And congratulations for all your hard work.
Thank you, Councillor Lam. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Okay. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Thomas.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to say a couple of things, because this is one of those reports where it's a report back to council on what's happened and a report back to the community, and it's really important that we sort of close the loop on a lot of activities that happen. And this is a relatively small team within council, so I think they punch above their weight. And if you don't have time out there to read the whole report, I direct you to, I think, page 6 of the glossy part of the report, where the headline numbers say that over $550,000 worth of grants were issued for local festivals and activations. We had 18 projects under Love Your West. We had about over 130,000 people attending the events. 20 organisations were funded under the Signature Festivals and Activation grants. 70,000 attended all the grant-funded events, and 18,000 people were at the New Year's Eve event in Footscray Park alone. You'll also see a very nice photo of the Mayor with his Santa hat on too on that page. So I just reiterate those to say that, you know, these are really strong outcomes in numbers, but, you know, what sits, of course, behind that is a whole lot of, you know, community participation in the events that Council operates. So thanks to all the officers for all of their work.
Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? No? Just before we get on to the voting, I might...
Thank you,
give
Mayor. I
Sarah
have just noticed an administrative error in that recommendation refers to 23-24 financial year. It needs to be 24-25. So if you're happy for us to amend that, councillors, then you can vote on that.
Yes.
Thank you.
I did read that too, yeah.
So done. So I'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. Motion is carried. Agenda item, we're moving on to agenda item 9.12, Governance Report, June 2025. I'll call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yangi.
Yeah. Good now. That Council note the June 2025 Governance Report, and in the exercise of powers conferred by Section 147, Part 4 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, resolve that the nominated council officers, as shown in Attachment 1, be appointed and authorised as set out in the instrument. B, that the instrument come into force immediately from when the common seal of councillors is affixed to the instrument and remain in force until council determines to vary or revoke them, and C, the instrument be sealed.
Thank you. I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? I'll now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. The motion is carried. We'll move on to notices of motion. The agenda item 10.2, notice of motion for the Indian flag raising ceremony, which I will have to vacate the chair in accordance with clause 24.10 of Council's governance rules to allow me to move this motion, and I'll now invite Deputy Mayor to assume the chair.
I now call on Councillor Tiwari to move a motion.
Thank you. That Council, 1, notes the recent request from the Indian community seeking support and recognition of the Indian Independence Day. 2, resolve to allow the Indian community to conduct an Indian flag raising ceremony in recognition of Indian Independence Day on or around 15th August each year. And 3, supports the community to host a welcome event at the Town Hall for the first year of the flag raising.
Thank you. I call on Councillor to second the motion. Councillor Lamb. Are there any questions, councillors, or points of clarification? No? Okay. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I will actually. So since assuming office as a councillor, I've had the privilege of attending many Indian functions or events, you can say, not necessarily within Maribyrnong, some within Maribyrnong, some without. So I'm quite happy to see this request from the Indian community seeking this support. I note that we have a large Indian database of residents the numbers I got from the governance are about over 5,000 people who speak the language or are related to it. So I'm quite happy to be part of this. I note that it aligns with our policies. We do other community flag raising days, so I'm quite happy for this to be on our calendar. So thank you.
Right. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Yes, briefly, Indian flag raising is a very significant day for the Indian community, and our council plan is reinforce the council commitment to supporting culture diversity and promoting community engagement. So I support the recommendation of the Indian Independence Day and every year on the 15th of August. So that I'm supporting this motion.
Thanks, Councillor. So would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Oh, yeah, I was thinking about that it'll come out. I mean, not that we're going to vote differently, but anyway. Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? No? Okay, I will now put the motion to the vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. And the motion is carried. Thank you. Carrying our own little...
Thank you. We'll move on to councillor question time. Councillor question time is managed in accordance with council's governance rules. Councillor question time is limited to 15 minutes unless councillors consent to an extension. Are there any councillor questions? Nope. Well then, councillor question time is closed. We'll move on to urgent business. Councillors, are there any items of urgent business? Nope. We'll move on to confidential business. Almost there, finished. Councillors, there are no confidential business to be tabled at the meeting. I now declare the meeting closed at 9:24 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for gallery for staying. We appreciate it. Good night.
Are we all?